Hello, welcome to EPG Pathshala. This is Dr. Neelam Yadav from Tata Institute of Social Sciences. Today I am going to cover the module which is related to under the subject social work under the paper of rural development, and the module is natural resource governance, policy and legislation. This module is actually divided into three units. First unit would be cover about natural resource management. Second unit would be about natural resource governance and policy, and third unit would be about environmental legislation. So basically overall this module is going to cover about the natural resource, its utilization, exploitation or overutilization, management, governance, policy and environmental legislation. So importance of water conservation and sustainable management. And within that module, I'll describe about the environmental, the constitutional provisions for environmental protection and conservation in India. So we can have a glance of the unit 1 of this module, that is a natural resource management. Within that we will discuss about many of the resources which is naturally occur on the planet. So these are the basic resources like forest resource, water resource, energy resource, land and soil resource, mineral and food resource. We will go in detail in the module one by one. We'll start with the earth resource. There are many, actually the whole planet or the universe has been divided into few segments. There are strata into the segments. Like first strata is that is called as atmosphere. But within atmosphere also there is again division of the whole compound. Like again it is being divided into various broadly 4 categories, but sometimes we can have 5 categories also. Like one is the troposphere, that is about 12 kilometers from the earth surface. Second is the stratosphere, that is from 12 to 50 kilometers from the earth surface. After that there is a mesosphere, also has been mentioned by some of the environmentalists, while some of the environmentalists has mentioned only thermosphere, that is from 50 to 700 kilometers, and the fourth one is the exosphere, which is beyond the 700 kilometer. But we will not go into the detail of this because our concern is other things which is related to earth resource only. So especially in atmosphere we are having oxygen, we are having ozone layer, or we are having rest of the things or components which is required for living being, or which is required for survival of the flora and fauna which is existing within the atmosphere. Second important layer is the hydrosphere, where we are having all the water bodies in different forms, either it is in ice form or it is in the liquid form or it is in a gaseous form. Next is the lithosphere, which is related to the soil and different forms of minerals that ultimately form the soil. It could be segmented one, or it could be like different minerals and biomass which actually help to construct the soil. And fourth one is the biosphere. Within that all the living beings are involved with their biotic and abiotic components. So these are the 4 spheres of the earth. Next is the natural vegetation. That vegetation means that includes all the green or all the kind of like trees, shrubs, creepers and bushes, or all these we can say that flora is there, which is considered as a natural vegetation that covers within the within the country. It has been divided broadly in 5 parts on the basis of their geographical as well as climatic differences. Like 5 are moist tropical evergreen and semi-evergreen vegetation that occurs in a temperate region in a very high altitude. Second one is the moist tropical deciduous vegetation that is also on the high altitude but little bit beneath of that. Third is dry tropical vegetation. Basically it occurs in the deserted area or where there is a arid or semi-arid land. Fourth is the tidal vegetation, where there is a swampy land or there is the most dynamic climatic conditions occurs. And next one is the mountain vegetations that is also in the high altitude. Within the forest resources, if we'll talk about the functions of the forest resources, so broadly we can see there are many more, but I have mentioned only few which is most important, like watershed protection. This is nothing but a kind of catchment area where there is one single outlet. So we are trying to recharge the groundwater, that is the watershed protection, and forest resources actually help into that. Next is the atmospheric regulation. Atmospheric regulation means there is a number of nutrient cycle which is existing, which is occurring in the atmosphere. So all these cycles as well as the flow of energy is being balanced because of the forest resources. Erosion control. Erosion control with the help of these trees or all the vegetations are having roots which is binding soil particles. So it helps to control the flow of the soil particles to get eroded. Land bank, because lot of nutrients as well as this upper surface of soil, the top soil, which is very crucial and which is very fertile for agriculture purpose and which is having nutrient component also. So this is a kind of land bank which helps because of the forest resources. Local use, of course, the local people, they are residing nearby the forest, they are utilizing all the product as well as byproduct which is coming out from the forest. So this is for their consumption. Apart from the consumption, they are using some of the part or some of the product which comes from the forest for the market purpose also. There is one example which will show how this there are some efforts is being done by the government as well as the community people for conservation of the forest resources. There is one concept that is a joint forest management, this is called. This is actually nothing but the joint effort of the government as well as the local communities. Like it can be seen in the slide also. The forest department has started this in Midnapur in West Bengal in 1972, and the concept or the main objective of the joint forest management was local people will form a joint forest protection committee, and that forest protection committee will take management as well as all the control over the resources of the forest. And this social forestry has also its formal origin in India, that was reported after the National Commission on Agriculture in 1976. There is another important example of the conservation of this forest that is called as a Chipko movement. Chipko movement, the terms itself means the embrace of the trees or embrace or the hugging of the trees or the plants. That has been started long back, almost 260 years before, and it was started by the Bishnoi community that was there in the Rajasthan in 18th century. Actually, it has been started like before, because there was the this Maharaj of Jodhpur. He has given a kind of instruction to fell all the trees. The group of women has taken initiative which was led by one lady, that was Amrita Devi. They all have decided to hug all the trees around that, so nobody would be able to touch to the tree. So this was a kind of hugging the tree that was becomes a movement because it was in a massive level, and that further has been deployed in 1973 also in other parts of country also, like in rest of the Himalayan region as well as in UP, in Uttar Pradesh also. And that movement has been encouraged in Himalayan as well as Uttar Pradesh is because of the support of one NGO, that was the Soli Gram Swarajya Sangh, and that has been provoked because the government has given order to cut the forest for preparing of the sports good over there. So it has been agitated to all the local people because they also have demanded before for preparation of some material out of the some agricultural based tools out of the forest, and that government has denied. So because of that instruction or that new demand of the government, everybody has been agitated and they have decided no, they will not allow government to cut the trees. So they also have taken it further. Like that, this movement is still being continued in other parts of countries also. Another important resource, that is water resource. Like it is very common, India is very much prone for flood and drought. It is being very common. Almost actually India ranks first in case of irrigated area, and into this almost 1/8 portion of the geographical land is more prone for flood, and 1/6 of the geographical location is more prone for drought. So these are the kind of situations which is related to water, either because of efficiency or because of deficiency. So we need to have to look into the resources of water so we can conserve properly in order to make it properly utilized. Like basically we are having four main resources of water. Like one is the surface water, second is the groundwater and or underground water, next is the atmospheric, and fourth one is the oceanic water. In order to protect, as I mentioned, in order to conserve the water resources, there are one practice which is called as a rainwater harvesting. This is nothing but a conservation or a kind of recharge of the underground water by collection of the rainwater. So this is because if there is a scarcity of surface water, then we are looking for the rainwater harvesting. Or if the growing dependence or under, because the plants or agriculture is basically depend on underground water, so this is also required to increase the infiltration rate of the land. So we are recommending for rainwater harvesting. And third is because of the over exploitation, as we know, because of urbanization it is being happen, so requirement of water is being increased while the water table is being going down, so we need to look for the rainwater harvesting. Government is also taking some initiative. As I mentioned earlier also, कि this country, India, is more prone for flood and drought. So in order to resolve this kind of issues, this kind of problems, government also has taken an initiative in order to make river linkage program. Especially in that river linkage program, they have decided and they have chosen 30 rivers, big rivers. Basically they have chosen the large rivers, and they have decided it to start from the 6 places in 3 stages. So National Water Development Authority has been constituted in 1982 with main objectives to resolve the issues of flood and drought. And they have decided in all 3 phases ki what would be the river would be that would be linked within all 3 phases. In first phase, basically peninsular river Mahanadi, Godavari, Krishna and Kaveri has been decided to linked. Then in second phase, linking of the small river basins of peninsular India, that was Ken, Betwa, Par, Tapi, these are the rivers. And in third stage, it has been decided the linking of tributaries of Ganga and Brahmaputra with one another. Next important resource is energy resource. This is also broadly divided into 2 categories. One is non-renewable and another is renewable. In non-renewable resources, it is considered that it is in finite. So it will not get replenished if it will be consumed once. So examples are like uranium, fossil fuel, oil, coal, and it is considered if it would be not recycled, so it would be remain in the soil in different forms as a waste material. While in case of renewable resources, it can be renewed again and again, and it can be means the supply would be continuous even after the consumption of that in the any amount. One thing I want to mention into that, like we are adding water and biological living resources into the renewable resources. In many literature it has been mentioned, but in general we can see in a long term water and biological living being also not going to be in the renewable resources. There are other classifications also given for the energy resources, like based on the usability of energy as well as based on the traditional use and based on the long-term availability. In case of usability of resources, it has been divided into 3: primary resources, intermediary resources and secondary resources. That is, primary is the raw form, and if it is being value added, then it would be intermediated, and it would be in a final form that could be consumed directly, that would be the secondary resources. Like examples are given in the slides. Second is on the basis of traditional use. In case of traditional use, before there was an oil crisis in 1973, the form of energy which has been used, that was called as a conventional energy resources. Generally, fossil fuels, nuclear and hydro resources was used for energy. But after 1973, after the oil crisis, it becomes that considered for large scale, that becomes non-conventional energy resources. Like currently we are looking for the solar energy, wind energy and biomass energy. And as I mentioned already about the non-renewable and renewable resources earlier, so this is the same for them. But the question comes, why we are looking to conserve the resources if we are energy resources? If we are having plenty of energy resources, so why there is a need to conservation? Because the way we have started to living in the current era with the modernization, with exploitation of more resources because of fulfilling the consumer requirement, that is called as a consumerism. So these are the kind of concepts which looks to the utilization of all these resources in a sustainable manner. So we need to look for the resources of energy also, like demand exceeds because of the automobiles, because of different kind of industrialization, urbanization, we are requiring more energy rather than the generation of that. Second is that energy saved is energy generated, obviously, if we are going to save it. And third is the fuels are limited. As I mentioned, of course it is going to be end up, so it may be limited. Next important resource is land and soil resource in India. I have added both together because of course land is the soil of the land is actually we are using for different purposes, basically for agriculture purpose. In terms of area, India ranks 7th in world, while in terms of population it is in 2nd. Arable land that covers total area 167 million hectare, that is almost 50% of the total geographical area or arable land, and almost 30% of India's surface area is covered by hills and mountain. So in next slide we can see there is a classification of or the mapping of the land has been given according to Department of Land Resources, Government of India. You can see almost 50% of that land is used for agricultural land out of 328 million hectare geographical area, while 4% would be for pastoral land, 21% would be for forest, and 24% would be as wasteland. In the table we can see the total land has been mentioned only 305, because out of 328 million hectare, only 305 million hectare has been accessibly and it has been surveyed, while rest of the 23% is remain unsurveyed and inaccessible. In soil resources, we are having a variety of soil across the country. So soil is again divided into various parts on the basis of the nutritious value, as well as the color of soil, as well as the fertility of that soil. Broadly it is being divided into 6 parts. One is the alluvial soil that basically occurs in the peninsular region of the Gangetic or the Ganga or Brahmaputra rivers bank. This is very much fertile soil and it is actually required for all kind of crops. Black soil, this basically occurs in some parts of Maharashtra, Andhra Pradesh, MP, Gujarat, and the color of soil is black because of presence of iron and aluminium. That's more suitable for cotton. Red soil, that is also suitable for some crops like oil seeds and like lentil or some pulses, but this is not very fertile like alluvial. Laterite soil, that basically occur in the places where there is more hot and humid, and generally which is in the high topography, like mostly in the northeast area it is being found, and tea or this kind of crops are more suitable for that. Desert soil, of course, it is more sandy, which is not very suitable for agriculture. Mountain soil, that occurs in a high topography. Mineral resources, of course, mineral is one of the natural component that comes from the earth and that is being processed out of the activity that is called as mining. So I have given only the process from which it is being extracted. Prospecting means the first stage is prospecting, that is the finding out the places where mineral can be extracted. Exploration means where the depth or where the more amount of the piles of the mineral can be there. Development, in the development process they are trying to extract it out of there, and in exploitation they are just removing minerals from the rest of the components. Food resources, this is also very crucial for us, and this we are considering as a resource because this is also required for the survival of human being. As I mentioned, we are having 328 million hectare geographical land. Out of that 50% we are using for the agriculture purpose. So within that, even being having that much of land, even the production that is coming out of the land is not sufficient for the country. But after green revolution in 60s, in the decade of 60s, we could get self-sufficiency for the food. But even then we are having some issues, like now we are having more technologies, more mechanization into the agriculture to grow the fruits and foods. But even we have few questions, like are fertile soil are being exploited faster than they can be recuperate. Forest, grassland and wetlands, they have been converted in agricultural use. That is also one of the main concern for the ecological balances. Our fish resources, marine and inland, that also show a kind of exhaustion. And there is a great disparity in the availability of nutritious food because of mechanization, because of application of lot of chemicals and pesticides. So we are having a concern for the food security, and government is having lot of provisions for food security also. There is a food security bill also. Fisheries I have mentioned because, as I mentioned, the fisheries or the fish resources also being exhausted. So it is being found that out of the whole resources of fish, almost 44% of the fisheries has been already overexploited. And we can understand because of lot of genetic transformation and mechanization or the biotechnology, this is also responsible for somehow genetic diversity, or there is a loss into that. Another unit which is also in the same module of the natural resource management, governance and policy. This is the natural resource governance and policy. So we can look into that, what are the requirement or how the international laws are having any kind of approaches for the natural resources policy. There are basically three ways in which international law seems important to think about international resource policies. Like if there is a differing legal concept of natural property rights affect the structure of international resource arrangement, or if there is a dispute about international law reveal underlying differences in view of equity or fairness in international natural resource arrangement, or if there is international law that can help nations reach cooperative arrangement for dealing with the natural resource problems. I would discuss about few important acts which is related to forest policy. Like it is during the colonial period, in the Forest Act 1865, it was also it has been first started of the Forest Act, in which the state has empowered to the government has empowered to the state where there is a forest resource that can be considered within the state. Second was Forest Act, that was also just exaggeration, or it can be said this is the comprehension of the previous Forest Act, but within that it has been divided again in various parts, like preserved forest, village forest or protected forest. So this is the basic difference within that. In post-colonial, there was again some forest policies, like Forest Policy of 1952, then Forest Act 1980 and Forest Act in 1988. In regard to all the Forest Act, government has implemented one more act, that was the Panchayat Extension in Scheduled Area. That was very important act actually in order to give rights to the tribes. And you can see how it has been empowered to the tribes. It means all the powers related to the control as well as management of the forest resources has been given to the tribal areas. National Food Security Act, as I mentioned in the resources, there is a concern now to think about the food security. So we are having the public distribution system. Even then we are facing a lot of difficulties in the getting food for the below poverty line people or above poverty line people. So now we are looking to the shift in the approach. There is a big paradigm shift from the welfare approach to the right approach. And in concern of that, as I mentioned, there was a lot of lacuna in terms of implementation of the public distribution system. So because of that, government has gone beyond a level that was called as a targeted public distribution system. It has been started in 1997, but even then there are some problems we have been faced in the targeted public distribution system also. And basically it is because of it has not been surveyed, it has not been identified properly who will come under the BPL or who will come under the APL. And sometimes there is a lack of coordination because of state as well as central level government also, that is causing the poor implementation of the TPDS. Participatory irrigation management, this is another policy. National water policy and state water policy, they emphasize that if we will involve the people also, local farmers also within the management techniques, so that would help us in distribution as well as a proper accessibility of water resources to all the farmers. Basically the objective of that was participatory irrigation management was equitable distribution of water among all the users, and it could protect the environment to ensure the ecological balances, and it would bridge the gap between potential created and potential utilized, and there would be a collective involvement of all the users. This is another important act, that is the Safe Drinking Water Act that came in. It was passed in 1974, and in order to provide a safe or clean drinking water facility to everyone. There are a number of agencies that make environmental laws and their enforcement in India. There was main landmarks like in 1972, National Council of Environment Planning and Coordination that was set up under the Department of Science and Technology. After that, it has been upgraded in 1980 and a separate Department of Environment has been created. And after that, in 1985, this Department of Environment has been upgraded at Ministry of Environment and Forest. And there are many other agencies which is also regulating the laws and policies related to environment, like Central Pollution Control Board, and this is on state level also, State Department of Environment, Union Territories Environment Committees, Forest Survey of India, Wildlife Institution of India, Botanical and Zoological Survey of India, and there are many more. There are major environmental laws. I'll just give you a brief about the environmental laws. If you want to get the details, that is there in the e-text, you can get it from there. But in general, I just want to mention about the Water Act. This is under the Central Pollution Control Board, CPCB. This is not only for preservation and control of pollution, but it was for providing clean drinking water also. Second was the Water Cess Act, means there should be tax, there should be a levy of tax. Who will utilize that, who will consume that water, they need to have pay something for that. The Air Act, that is related to, means all the parties, all the industries has to get a consent from the Central Pollution of Control Board if they are going to emit some pollution beyond a prescribed limit. Environment Act, this is one of the umbrella act that comes in 1986, that is basically concerned with all the pollutions which is emitting out of the industries and rest of the plants. So they were considering about it should not go beyond the prescribed level actually. The hazardous waste rules, within that all these industries and policies has to take consent from the CPCB if they are going to produce some hazardous waste and how they are going to handle it. The manufacture, storage and import of hazardous chemical rules. Public liability Insurance Act that came in 1991. This was the liability of the owner actually. If there is some emergency or some kind of disaster will happen, so they have to provide the compensation to the rest of the parties. National Environmental Tribunal Act, this is also almost same. In case of any disaster, any situation, they have to provide compensation. So these are some of the environmental related legislations. You can get all the details from the text. Environmental audit. This is one of the environmental protection rule that made the submission of an environmental audit report, that was a compulsory. For that there is eco mark. This is a mark which is given for if this is a clearance which is given from the environmental impact. So they will, Ministry of Environment and Forest would provide a mark that would show this got clearance. This is a tilted pot, earthen pot, that will be called as an eco mark. In Constitution of India also we are having the right to life that contains in Article 21, that is also have the right to clean and human environment. There are basically two kind of policies. One is protectionist policy, means there is a ban on the products which is not, or there is a provision on these products which is not good for from the point of view of environment. Like you can see there is a ban of the leaded petrol and use of plastic bags, and another policy is improvisionistic policy, where we are trying to encourage those things which is more utilized or which is more beneficiary for the environmental purpose. Like we are looking for the CNG, low sulfur fuel, tree plantation and many more. This is the role of Pollution Control Board. The Pollution Control Board, that is a statutory organization. It has been formed in 1975 in order to control over all the organizations, all these industries and plants, to look after the range of the pollutants which is coming out from them. In a similar manner, it is at every state level also. Like you can see example, it is there in every state, in Uttar Pradesh, in Delhi, in Haryana, and in other states also. Apart from all these legislations, all of these policies, there are many person also, they have been act as an activist in case of environmental protection. Like I have listed only few names, apart from them there are many more. MC Mehta, Medha Patikar, Chandi Prasad Bhatt and Sundar Lal Bahuguna. Medha Patikar, this is well-renowned lady. She has worked in Narmada Bachao Andolan. Chandi Prasad Bhatt, Sundar Lal Bahuguna, Anil Agarwal, they all have related to the environment and the Chipko movement. They were related with that. Prafulla Samantra, he has worked for tribes and their rights. Rashid B and Champa Devi, Baba Balbir Singh, Sindhwa, all are related to somehow to give protection for the environment. So within this, the whole module has been covered about all the natural resources. What are the resources that we are having, how we have to utilize it, and how it is being utilized, if it is being overexploited. So government has also taken some initiative. Apart from the legislation of the government of India, there are some United Nations body, they also have taken consideration into that, and we are having convention as well as treaty with them in order to conserve and protect the environment. That is all about from my side. And if you want to get the detail of any part of the module, you can get e-text which would be uploaded on the website. Thank you.